go live, so you could go live a little earlier.
Right. So I'm going to start. I'm actually starting right now. Then I'm going to put it on my page. It's on my podcast page I have, but I'm going to then share it to my other page, to my own page. Would you rather I just share it to my own page?
Whatever you like. I could share it after also. I'm gonna put you as green.
Okay.
I don't know if it's such a good color. Could you see the green? I'll do yellow.
By the way, we're live. If
Oh, we're live.
well, I don't know if anyone's watching it, but it's ready to go. Okay.
I don't know if we can see this. Okay.
Do you want to start it now, or should we?
I think we should. Welcome everyone who's joining.
Hi, everybody. My name is Scott.
I'm Franciska. Nice to see you all here.
This is going to be a lot of fun today, Franciska. We are going to talk about the 5 reasons that you should not start a podcast, because a lot of people, everyone nowadays, not a lot of people, everybody thinks they should start a podcast, and a lot of them are correct. They should start a podcast. But you know what? I think a lot of them have good reasons that they might actually be mistaken, and maybe they shouldn't make a podcast after all.
Yes. And people keep reaching out and wanting help figuring this out. So we thought it would be such a cool idea to bring out all the things we've picked up on from different people and just share all this wisdom and knowledge with you, so you can decide for yourself whether you are not ready, confirm your biases, or the opposite, maybe confirm that you are finally ready to launch.
Franciska, that sounds great. Can we start off by introducing each other? How about you tell everybody who you are?
Absolutely. So I'm Franciska Kosman. I started out as a musician, singer, composer, turned podcaster. I used my podcast to build an audience for my music and the space I'm in. And now I help others launch and build podcasts, build impact using their podcasts.
And you also have a fantastic podcast, The Franciska Show, which is terrific.
Thank you so much. Now it's your turn.
Okay, my turn. My name is Scott Khan. I'm a rabbi, and I used to run a yeshiva. For 11 years, I ran a yeshiva called Yesodei HaTorah here in Beit Shemesh, where I live with my wife, Elisa, and our 7 kids. And about 6 years ago, I moved into a different realm, into the realm of podcasting, which is where I am now. I host a few podcasts. One of them is called Orthodox Conundrum, dealing with issues in the Orthodox community. Another one is called Intimate Judaism, where I co-host along with Tali Rosenbaum, talking about intimacy and sexuality and halacha and Torah Judaism. In fact, we released a new episode today, so you should check that out, about LGBTQ, and had a nice panel discussion. In any case, I have a website called JewishCoffeehouse.com. And like Franciska, I also am a podcast producer. I help people in whatever it is they want to do when it comes to podcasting. If you want to start a podcast, if you want to edit a podcast, if you want to produce a podcast, I will help you do it. So in that sense, Franciska and I have a lot in common, and hopefully we can share some of what we've learned over the past few years with you, and let us know what you think.
And one more fun fact, JewishCoffeehouse.com, which Scott is the founder of, the Franciska Show is a part of that network. So we are related in the podcasting family.
Absolutely. Proud to have you aboard. Okay. Franciska, do you want to get into the discussion about why not to have a podcast? Maybe it's time right now.
Yes, it's definitely time. Okay.
Why don't you give the first reason?
Great. There are so many reasons. For the first one is I want to do something that doesn't involve so much time. So if you have a big move coming up, or a new job, or something super overwhelming in your life, that's a great reason not to start a podcast if you're already trying to make it through your day without like huffing and puffing. So are you on board with that one?
100%. I know that people feel that, okay, this is the kind of thing that everyone's got to do, and it can't be that hard because everyone's doing it. And you're right, it's not that hard, but if you want it to be anything that's worthwhile and worth doing, it actually does take some time. So this is not something which you can just throw away. I'll do a half hour a week and that's all it takes. It actually does require an investment of time. So if you wanted to have an easy, there are a lot of good reasons that you don't have time, but if you want to do something without you spending a lot of time, podcasting is probably not for you. You really got to make sure it's good.
But I'd like to add to that. It doesn't have to take up so much time, especially if you have a big team and a big support system. However, when you're launching, you might need a little extra time because you do have to decide on a title, and you do have to decide what you want to be talking about and who you want to be talking to. So even if there are great systems, which Scott and I both have incredible ways to help you and support you so this doesn't overwhelm your life, starting the podcast can be a little bit more time consuming. You might need to, find a couple of hours to just launch it. So if you don't have time for that, that's a reason not to start a podcast.
Absolutely. It's something which eventually you get into a routine. It becomes easier over time, particularly if you have people working with you who can help you with some of the technical details. At the beginning, though, you definitely have to have an investment of time. All right. Should we move on to the next?
Yes.
Next reason. Okay.
Let's
so
do it.
the next reason not to start a podcast is because I want to start my podcast because I want to earn money from my podcast right away. Now, it sounds great, but this is an incredible reason not to do a podcast. It doesn't mean there's no money whatsoever in podcasting. But if you think that you'll start your podcast and right away, within a few months, you're going to have advertisers beating down your door and the money's going to start rolling in, it might, but it probably won't. For most people, they can make money in podcasting. We will talk about that later on, how that is or is not possible, but it's not a simple matter, and certainly not from advertising. We all know the very big podcasts in here, whether it's Blue Apron or ZipRecruiter, and they're putting these ads on podcasts. They probably make thousands and thousands of dollars. It happens, but first of all, not the beginning, unless you're really, really well known. And second of all, it takes a long time anyway to build up to that particular point, if you ever do. There are lots of reasons to make podcasts aside from advertising revenue. This is something, Franciska, which when I first started out 5 years ago, I thought this is how it's going to be. I'm going to start making podcasts. I'll just make some content, great content, and eventually advertisers are going to start banging down my door and all excited to join me. Well, I'm really proud of what I did, but advertising is not an easy way to make money in podcasting. So if that's your reason, I would discourage you from making a podcast.
Well, I'll just add to that. Sometimes I'll listen to a new podcast that just popped out and they have all these sponsors. And, in this industry, I've built relationships with lots of people. Sometimes later on, I'll hear, oh, we did it for free. I just wanted to look like we have sponsors to our audience. So even if podcasts have sponsorships, they might not actually be making money on those sponsorships. That's just a side point. The other thing I wanted to add here, I like to call it the chicken and the egg situation. If you are already making money via other streams and other businesses, your podcast can be a great vehicle to amplify that, to scale that. But if you have nothing and then you start a podcast, it's like building a business. You can't, you may, but it's not a great expectation to go into it thinking you're going to just make it into a business after one episode. So that's just good to have in mind. Some people do, and that's because they already have a business that's running successfully and they use the podcast to amplify that. That's when it does work automatically, or, ABC 1, 2, 3, go.
This is not some sort of magic bullet that suddenly you do it and the money just rolls in. It doesn't work like that. But there are lots of good reasons to have podcasts too, but not because you're immediately going to have tons of advertisers who want to advertise on your podcast.
And there are podcasters out there raking it in and making a ton of money from the podcast.
Big time.
I don't want to make
big time for sure. There are people who are making tons of money on podcasts. But if you are a person who does not have a large following and you said, I will one day have a large following and make money from my podcast, and that's going to start in a month, give it a little more time.
Okay. I think we're ready for number 3.
Okay. Go for it, Franciska.
I'm looking forward to having a podcast that takes off by itself without any need to promote it. And I'll just say how that resonates with me a lot, because I started out as a musician and I thought I'd just create the music and then it would promote itself. Mm-hmm. And guess what? It did not.
Did it work?
I had to eventually, once I started using the tool of podcasting, it helped me promote it. But again, starting the podcast didn't promote itself. I had to then use other tools to actually promote the podcast. So if you have something you want to promote, podcasting is not going to be the vehicle to promote it. It's going to be the vehicle to educate. So you still need to draw people into your podcast. They might not find it by searching through Google. They might have to know about it to go search for it. But once they're there, you have an opportunity to educate, nurture, teach, prepare them for whatever else it is that you want them to buy or purchase or sign up for.
Right. If you're looking to not promote, then perhaps this is not the field in which you should use your talents, because it requires, like anything, it doesn't just happen magically. It requires some work. It requires some promotion. Okay.
But there is a lot of magic to podcasting. It looks a little different.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's harder than it looks, I'd say, even though once you learn how to do it, it's totally doable. But what goes on behind the scenes, I don't want to ruin the magic for anybody, but what goes on behind the scenes is it requires a little bit of thinking and a little bit of knowledge in order to make sure it works properly. Ready to move on to the
Right.
next one, Franciska?
Yeah.
Okay. This is what we call the should reason. This is the should reason. Everyone else has a podcast, so I should have a podcast. I mean, on the one hand, that's not a terrible reason to have a podcast, but I don't think it's a really good reason to have a podcast. In fact, I would even say it's a reason not to have a podcast because it requires some sort of investment of your time, investment of your passion. If you're not passionate about it, if you're only doing it because it seems like everybody's got one, so I got to have one too. The problem is that you really have to feel passionate about it, or else it's gonna like fall apart. I think, Franciska, you posted not that long ago that the average podcast, please tell me if I'm wrong, the average podcast lasts for 7 episodes. Is that what you said?
Yes. Unfortunately, it's
Yeah,
a crazy number.
But that's what this is about. People are starting a podcast because, well, that's what people do nowadays. It's like you start a Facebook account, you start a Twitter account, you start an Instagram account, and you make a podcast. If you're not really interested in it, if it doesn't really speak to you, if you're not willing to put in that passion and invest your emotions, forget time, but invest actually your emotions, your desire to really do it, it's probably going to fall apart because pretty soon, I always say content is a ravenous beast. Being able to fill up episodes takes some work, takes some thinking. If you don't really care about it, you're only doing it because everybody else is, so to speak, then it probably won't be something which you can keep going at for a long time.
And I want to remind you, passion is key here because you can create a team and you could have people supporting you and doing the work that takes the time. All you need is the passion. So if it's just, I should, just because instead of I have something I need to share, or there's something I need to make change about, if you're lacking that amount, that piece, then the podcast is going to fall apart. But if you have that passion, but you don't have the time, there are systems in place and there are ways to actually not to have to invest so much time in this. But the passion, I think that's number one. Without it, if it's a should thing, I think forget about it.
I assume, Franciska, you've seen the same thing I have. People start a podcast and they're so excited about it. And then pretty soon you say, what happened to your episodes? And they're just gone. It happens all the time. And everyone's well-meaning. They intend to do it. But if they don't really care about it, if it's not something which really means something to them, chances are they're not gonna be able to continue. Just, it doesn't mean enough to them. It requires thinking about it and being emotionally invested in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That's 4 reasons so far. 4 reasons not to make a podcast. Let's go on to reason number 5, Franciska.
Okay. Here's a reason, and hopefully I'll change your mind on it or not. I only like to talk to live audiences. So if you are somebody who is very extroverted, which means that you derive energy from other people engaging with your content, and you're just thinking about a podcast where you're talking to yourself, now that can be eliminated by having a guest or a co-host. But let's say you're a solo host, then talking to yourself can be a quite hard experience to have. So there are great tools to how you can repurpose your live content into podcasts. But if you have no interest in engaging in this at all, or repurposing your content that you are creating for live audiences, or other tips and tools that I have, then this is not for you. Because if you are a solo host and you are going to have to sit down once a week and talk to yourself for, whatever it is, 10 minutes, 40 minutes, I don't see that lasting for longer than maybe even 1 episode might be too hard for someone.
I mean,
like
some
you.
people, Franciska, you're a singer, so you might know this better than I do. Some people really need that audience feedback, that feeling of like that energy they derive from the crowd. And what's really interesting is that when you're talking to a live audience in person, you get that. In a podcast, chances are you're going to talk to, at least when you build it up, way more people than you normally would in a live audience. I mean, you could be talking to hundreds or thousands of people, but you don't get that immediate feedback. You don't get that feeling of all these people are listening to me right now as I say it. That sense of sipuka nefesh, as we would say, that sense of satisfaction comes afterwards when you say, oh, wow, look at how many people looked at this. Listen to how many people listened to this. Look at all the feedback I'm getting and all the comments I'm getting from people I never heard of before. But that immediate sense, I'm talking to the mic and people are, yeah, that you don't get that at all. So if that's what you really need, then you're not going to get that in the podcast.
Or at least the classic way you won't. But I would like to, turn this around and say the nice part about podcasting versus live audiences. So if you identify as a more introverted person, or you like to have things pre-recorded, in a safe space where things can be taken out and it's not all, show up, do it well, and then it's one and done. For example, I have a lot of sensitive conversations that happen on my podcast. I know you do also.
Definitely.
Having that safe space that's pre-recorded, and you assure your guests that we can provide anonymity if needed. We can edit things out. That gives that space of safety that a lot of non-extroverted, or sometimes, people who have both, need that. And that's a way for them to actually thrive when sharing their passion and content.
Yeah, I have more to say about that in a little bit, but I guess I'll wait till we get to the other part of our live today, because I thought about this a lot. So, okay, we'll continue with that then. So that's 5 reasons that you should not make a podcast. Let's go over them again. All right. I want to do something that doesn't involve a big investment of time. Okay, that's a bad reason to do a podcast. I want to earn money right away from my podcast. I am looking forward to having a podcast that takes off by itself without any need to promote it. That everyone else has one, so I should also. And I like talking only to a live audience. If any of these are you, then you're probably not right, at least now, to go into a podcast. It could be we'll change your mind. It could be that you'll change your mind. But if these are the primary reasons why you're going into podcasting, I think it probably isn't for you, at least not today.
I agree with you. But if you're still watching and you're still curious what we have to say and why we plan such an interesting title for today's talk, then keep listening, because even if these 5 reasons do apply to you today, maybe these next points, or the reasons that podcasting can be what you need right now, maybe we can change your mind.
Right. It's like, if you're still here, if this didn't turn you off, then probably these don't apply to you. And maybe there are some good reasons to podcast. Speaking, I'm sure on your behalf as well, Franciska, we're podcasters. We think there are plenty of good reasons to podcast too. So maybe we can talk about some of those right now, maybe try and answer some questions that our viewers have.
Yes, absolutely. Do you see those questions, or we have those questions? Okay.
We have those questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We're the ones we sourced in advance. Okay. I just know we're live.
It's entirely ad lib. There are no notes to this podcast. So this is that discussion.
We never have any notes to any podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. So
by the way, I'll say that's a good way to have a bad podcast. Don't prepare. That's another reason. I don't want to prepare. So that's another reason not to do a podcast. If you have no interest in preparing personally, I like to prepare. I feel that's good, but maybe you disagree with me. I don't know. It could be that you have more natural talent than I do. I always have to make sure I come in with my notes and that I've thought about it in advance.
So I think there's a flip here. Some people like to be more prepared. Some people like to edit things after and just have that creative energy flow come out and see how things come out without scripting it before. I've seen it all work. So I think it's really for the host to decide what's better for their creative energy. Because
all right, good.
Okay.
So let's go to our questions. Yeah.
Our first question will be, it seems like everyone is already doing a podcast. Is there a way to get noticed or be a little different? What's the point?
Okay. So first, the bad news. All right. So I'm going to offer some bad news first before offering some good news. I know these are reasons you should do a podcast, but I want to use a little metaphor over here, which I once heard. Imagine a 100-story skyscraper, and every story in that skyscraper has 100 restaurants. And you are one of 100 restaurants on the 71st floor. That means there are 10,000 restaurants and you're on the 71st floor. And all of these restaurants are there. Do you think that anyone's going to really notice you if you're on the 71st floor? That is the bad news. That is kind of what podcasting often is, if not done correctly. Because if you're going to talk about, I have a podcast that was on hiatus now because the baseball season is over, but it's called the Baseball Rabbi. If we're going to talk about baseball, I'm sure you can guess how many people have podcasts that talk about baseball. And especially they're going to listen to some guy named Scott Kahn talk about baseball. I don't have a famous baseball reputation. I'm a restaurant on the 71st floor with another 100 restaurants on that same floor. No one's going to find me. There's no way to distinguish yourself if that's all you have. But there actually are answers to this and ways of allowing yourself to become noticed. The first one is almost counterintuitive. It is narrow. Narrow the things you talk about. Narrow your target audience. Using that same example, if you're talking about baseball, why is anyone going to listen to you? Maybe, but you have to be very, very lucky or very famous going in. But if you talk about a very specific part of baseball, you're talking about, let's say, one particular team or one particular attitude, one way of doing it. For example, in the podcast that we do, the Baseball Rabbi, we talk about advanced analytics and history, we found a very specific corner. Now it's counterintuitive because you think you want the biggest audience possible, so it should be as broad as possible. But then you're just making yourself a restaurant on the 71st floor. The way to have someone notice you, to get to that 71st floor, to go up in that elevator and go to you, is because you're talking about something which not many other people are talking about. You found a unique corner. You then have a narrow, small bullseye, and you grow from there. So yes, you can be noticed, but the way you're noticed is by starting off small. Find your real fans, the people who say, that guy is exactly what I want. And then you grow it from that initial idea. All right. You start off with the bullseye of the target and expand from there. That's my first point. I'd like to make another point. I'm sure you have to add to this as well, Franciska. But another point is actually almost pretty obvious, but there's so many podcasts. A lot of them aren't that good. Either the person doesn't know how to interview, or it's not recorded that well, or it's edited poorly. If you have a podcast which won't distract the listener because you have good quality recording, you have nice editing, you actually ask your guests, if you have a guest, good questions, and it's done in a nice conversational way, you've now taken away a lot of reasons why they're not going to listen to a bunch of other podcasts. At least you haven't given them negative reasons not to listen to you. So you're now attracting them into yours. So that's two reasons why you, even though despite being on the 71st floor, might allow yourself to get noticed, and then you can grow from there.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to that. I love the restaurant analogy because I identify with food analogies. They make sense to me right away. I'd like to use your industry a little bit as a rabbi. I would think I've worked with a lot of rabbi podcasters. Another rabbi podcast or another, Parsha or Torah or inspirational with coaches. I worked a lot, and another coach. Why should I start a podcast? My favorite answer to that is because you are unique. You are a person with your unique experiences and your unique expertise. And people will be drawn to you perhaps because of your voice or your personal experiences that they relate to. Or maybe it's your language or pronunciation or affiliation that they feel connected to. And even if they know some big names in the industry, if they want to listen to something that they feel that relates to them, it's all about finding that connection. And with podcasting, you don't need millions of people. You just need to find your group, that your super fan group.
Your fans, exactly.
Your fans. And by you being you and you doing what you do best, that's how you attract them in. And no one is going to be you. No fingerprints are exactly the same. And you have to embrace that.
Right. And that's why you have something to offer. And that's what people have to realize. We're going to talk about that again. That's actually a point we're going to make in a few minutes. But definitely the idea that you do have something to offer. You have a unique voice. Every person has a unique voice. If you're really passionate about getting into podcasting, and if you're still listening, you probably are, then that means that you have something you want to say. And if you can say it in a way which is different from everybody else, then you probably have a chance of getting noticed. Just don't expect at the beginning you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of listeners. You might be lucky, but chances are you have to find those fans, and then they'll share it with their friends who say, this is a great guy. This is a really interesting podcast. You move it and expand it from there.
Right. I think the goal here needs to be, I have a message I need to spread, or there's something that needs to be heard and understood, and not, I want to fill up a room with 500 people right now. Mm-hmm. It's not about you. It's about your impact. It's about that long-term mission. It's not about right now, how do I make myself feel good and on a stage with so many people? It's not about that.
Absolutely. Ready to move on to the next question?
Yes, I think we are.
Okay. Franciska, how do I know if now is the right time? Should I wait for my podcast, or should I do this podcast right away? And by the way, I hear this all the time. People are always interested in starting, but then something takes them away from really finally doing it. And it takes months and months before they decide. How can we convince somebody, if it is the right time, that it is the right time?
Okay, so, we went into this a little at the beginning, and I mentioned how, if you just had a baby 5 seconds ago, or if you just moved countries, or something else major happened in your life, maybe if you want to use the momentum of that inspiration or energy, maybe it is. But if you are so overwhelmed with your life, you can barely keep up with prepping your meals and eating, then it's probably bad time. But say life is normal and you're sort of ready for a new project, but this seems really scary. It seems intimidating. It seems like you need to figure out a mic and plugs and headphones and speaking and figuring out a title. There's so many different things. think about the fear aspect of I'm putting myself out there for people to judge. Now people are going to think, oh, now that so-and-so popped up as a podcaster. Now, what do they have to say? There's so much fear that one has to overcome to actually put themselves out there. I am so grateful that by the time I was starting my podcast, I've already put myself out there with all my music. So I sort of lost that part of, the shame aspect. But there's a lot of actual performance anxiety that goes into this, putting yourself out there. And I think realizing that that's what's going on, and that's what may be, pushing it off, or that commitment that's creeping in. If you identify that that's what's happening, it's easy to address once you call it out. But it might not be around, my topic is not good enough, or I don't know which microphone to get. It could actually be a lot more going on there, where am I good enough? What are my parents going to think? What are my in-laws going to think? Am I, so, or kids maybe.
What are my kids going to think?
Right.
I'm the one who has the podcast Intimate Judaism. Definitely what are my kids going to think, or my mom?
Well, how have you dealt with that?
I think part of it is learning to be comfortable with what you have to say, learning to have confidence that what you say is worth hearing. And I think the belief that other people will want to hear what I have to say. It's not something that comes naturally for me. It's not something which I have this natural sense of confidence that, I ooze confidence. Everyone wants to hear what I have to say. I don't believe that. But I do think that on my various podcasts, I am using a very specific methodology and a very specific audience. I'm trying to address those people who do want to hear this kind of content. And because I think that we are addressing it on any of the podcasts. So once you realize that people are enjoying it and you get good feedback, it actually helps. It really encourages you. I want to add something to what you said, Franciska, by the way, because you say people are, when they say, what microphone should I use? And there's so many things to worry about. And maybe that's not what's really happening. But let's say, for example, let's pretend that actually is what's happening, because there are a lot of details you have to deal with. But at the same time, it's a lot of details when you look at it sort of in isolation, when you don't even know what you're doing. Once you have a list and you can get a list, you can say, okay, I need to do A, B, C. There might be a lot of things on the list, but it's actually not as daunting as it could be. You can start going through it. You figure out which mic to get, you figure out which recording software to use. There are all sorts of things you can do step by step that make that a little bit less daunting. So if the reason you're putting it off is because it just seems to be so much stuff, it's utterly overwhelming, I think that is true until you really get into it. You say, you know what, if I really want to do it, it actually is less overwhelming than I originally thought.
Yeah. And we'll talk about it at the end, what kind of support we both offer. So this doesn't have to be an overwhelming experience, and actually be a really supportive and beautiful experience.
I'll tell you something. Today, I was actually recording a podcast with somebody, a new client. I went out about an hour drive and I brought my recording equipment. And they said to me, for this particular client, I said, just sit back. They already prepared the podcast. We did the preliminary work. And today I said, just do what you have to do. And I'm here and I'll make sure it sounds great. So ultimately there's a lot of work, but not nearly as much as you might suspect once you know how to do it.
Yeah. Every time I say there's a lot of work, I'm like, don't say that. Don't scare them away. But no, it's important. And we have to. There's
a lot of work, but it shouldn't be daunting, because it actually is totally doable. Once you are willing to do it, it's less than you think.
What gets me going is it's not about me. It's about the message. It's about the stories. When I get messages pouring in saying, wow, thank you for talking about this topic, or this is inspiring so many people, or thank you for bringing this to light or to attention, or speaking about this, that gets me excited about the next topics that need to be talked about, and it maybe pushes me out of my comfort zone. And I'm happy to put in the work. I don't look at it as work. I look at it as my mission.
Totally.
I have to do this.
You know what I feel great about when I podcast? I know this is sort of a side topic, but really excites me, aside from the idea of, on to the next thing. I have met so many interesting people. When I interview people that it's not that they're celebrities, but these are people who have interesting stories that if I weren't doing podcasting, there's no way I could sit and talk to them for an hour just about, tell me about what you do. Tell me about what matters to you. And I've made some real friends, and I've been able to really connect to people in ways that I wouldn't have otherwise, and learned a lot too. That's what excites me.
Oh, absolutely. You build such a network. I've made some of my best friends through this podcasting life.
Yeah.
And there are just so many hidden gems that just come along with it. And I'll say one of them, it's really a license to reach out to anyone and ask them for a one-on-one conversation, to ask any questions you have. And
totally.
if you're a journalist, sometimes people don't want to listen to talk to you, but a podcaster, it's some sort of, safe haven for people, for some. So I've been enjoying that.
Me too. Absolutely. Okay. Should we move on to the next one?
I think we are ready.
Okay.
And I'm asking you, right?
You'll ask me this question.
Okay.
Again, totally
So-
ad lib, not prepared.
Well, we are displaying what it means to podcast. We have to prepare. Okay.
Okay.
So how will this help my business or my organization? Is this a business model, and how does that work?
So I'll give you an example of something which I once heard, not in podcasting, but actually in publishing. I was talking to a book publisher, and he himself was an author before he became a publisher. And he mentioned that he wrote a book about a particular topic, nonfiction, whatever the particular topic was. And he said it's a kind of topic that he wrote about it and he became an expert in it. But he's one of many experts. He's not the only one who knows about this topic. Many people know about this topic. But he wrote the book. And because of that, he became known as the expert. Is he the only expert? Absolutely not. But when people want an expert, whether it's for a speaking gig, whether it's for a scholar in residence, whatever it might be, they call him. And he acknowledges, he goes, I'm not the world expert on this, but I wrote the book, so I'm the person people come to. And I think a lot of that is true when it comes to podcasting. I'll use an example from my own life here. I never dreamed growing up that I would be the sex rabbi. Let's put it out there. That was not my goal when I got smicha. At the same time, when Tali and I started this podcast, Intimate Judaism, so I've done research. You can't not know anything. You have to know something. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have the same knowledge that I do when it comes to this. I'm sure there are people who have plenty more knowledge than I do. But at the same time, because I have the podcast, people know that if they have certain questions and they have certain things they want to talk about, I'm someone they can turn to. And Tali is someone they can turn to. So that's an example of a way that it can really help your business. It can help your organization because you're promoting your brand. It's not that the podcast brings in money from advertising necessarily, although it can. It's rather that you are now making yourself or your company or your cause or your organization or your school more well-known. And in that particular area, that's the place that people go to. People go to work and they have their regular cycle of podcasts. If they're driving and you are their Tuesday morning podcast on their 40-minute commute and you talk about a certain topic, well, guess what? When they're not the only one, they're going to share with other people who like the same thing. And by the time they want someone who's an expert, they're going to go to your organization or to you as a person. That's how I think it really can help more than any other way, perhaps. Once again, you can't not know anything. I don't mean that this is a fake out, but the way you can make yourself go to the top of the pile. People have resumes. There's a top of this whole pile of resumes. How do you get your resume to go to the top? By having a podcast, by being the person who's more expert, by being the person who's known as the expert in this particular area. So you have created space for yourself. That's what I would answer to that question, Franciska.
Yeah, I love that a lot. And I'll add I guess the next question is a little connected. So should we just transition to the next one and I'll add what I have?
Sure. So you're referring to, are you talking about question 6 on our list over here?
7.
Oh, question 7. Okay. So, we can talk about that because I think we have a couple we might have skipped over here, but we'll go back to that,
have
right?
we?
Yeah, I think 3 and 4, but that's fine.
So let's go to 3 and 4.
Okay. So, saying I'll ask you 4 and then you can ask me 3. All right. Okay.
Okay.
One question is, how much is this actually going to cost? All right. Can I make a podcast on the cheap? That's a good question.
That's a great question. So I like to view the world in the time and money balance. So if you have time to spend on something, you can spend less money on something. If you have less time, sometimes you'll want to spend more money to save that time. So whatever your value compass today or at this time is, that's how you should guide it. So there is Anchor, for example. It's completely free and you post your podcast there for free and there's barely anything involved besides for recording. Yeah. And it's a great amateur podcast solution. Very little, very little upfront stuff that you have to do and you just keep going with it. And then once you go into the professional realm of podcasting, it just doesn't just double, it quadruples the amount of things that you have to do to set up. But guess what? You get to control a lot of the things on the back end to help with the optimization, to help with showing up, to help with all the amazing tools that podcasting can provide for you. So how much does it actually cost? So technically speaking, it's an audio-based communication system. So a mic or something clear can be great, but you can get anything from a hand-me-down to a $60 microphone all the way to $400 or $500, depending on what you want to spend. Right. Can you get yourself a beautiful studio with soundproofing? Absolutely. You can also go into a closet or into a car when it's not raining, and there you go, soundproof room, free. Do you want to edit? Do you want to go on the fly? Do you want somebody to help you edit? So these are all the different options. So to answer your question, you can absolutely do a podcast without spending any money, zero. But then even if you go professional, you could get a $60 mic. You could pay $5 a month for hosting, and that's it. Next level, you add a few more soundproofing materials or a few more pieces to your podcast, maybe a ring light, some other things to make it nicer. Maybe you want to add some things for your guesting experience, your Zoom Pro or Canva Pro, or maybe you want some other things. And then, of course, you have many tiers. You can outsource everything. You could have somebody coach you while you're speaking, help you with your content, help you schedule your guests or find your guests. You can hire someone to find you sponsors. You can have somebody edit out all your ums. You can have somebody create all your social media content. So you can build and build. I earned the award in my family, I think, from people I know. I am very talented at spending money. Like if you give me an obscene amount of money, I can figure out how to spend it, because there are just so many different things that you can embellish any project and make it super, super, super expensive, beautiful. It doesn't have to be that, but there is just an unlimited amount of things you can do with your podcast, and which makes it so amazing.
I'll just add one point to that, because people often wonder in terms of microphone quality, because I'm a big advocate for it should sound good, because even if people listening aren't thinking consciously about the sound, if it doesn't sound really good, they're probably not going to come back, because they don't want to have to think about that. They don't want to have to struggle a little bit to listen. So to make it sound good, once upon a time would take thousands of dollars worth of equipment. That's simply not true anymore. You can record in a room like this. This is just a basement room in my house, and you can have a microphone that costs $120, $240, $360, something like that. And that's not cheap, but compared to what it once was, you can still get almost FM level quality that once upon a time would have been impossible. So the equipment itself, nowadays, technology has advanced to the point that equipment, you can keep going. Of course, I've walked into B&H Photo in New York. They have microphones there for like tens of thousands of dollars, but the more expensive it gets, the less incremental or the more incremental it gets in terms of the improvements. A $10,000 mic isn't twice as good as a $5,000 mic, and a $5,000 mic isn't twice as good as $2,500. For something that costs a few $100s, you can already be in a realm where you're having a really, really good sound where your listeners will really enjoy it. So there's plenty of things you can spend money on. If you're daunted or overwhelmed by the price of equipment, that's not the place to worry about. If you're going to invest in a podcast, equipment is something which actually is reasonably inexpensive nowadays, and something which you can spend money on, but you don't have to break the bank for it.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, just because it's fun. It's a real fun conversation here. And I'm sure you have your own personal criticism toward my show, because my goal is not to have perfect sounding for me.
Me? Criticize the Franciska show? Never.
The audio quality. Okay. I am very self-conscious about my audio quality, because I have the least amount of time spent optimizing it, which hopefully I will improve. We always keep improving. Sure. But there are so many plugins and different tools that sometimes, my cable has like a zzz sound and it's picking up all that feedback. Or I am just stuck somewhere because, mom life, I don't get to record my podcast the way I wanted to. Ideally, there are things I can do after to make the sound professional, even if I wasn't using a mic, or even if my mic was half broken or half connected, or if I had kids screaming in the background, or dogs, or whatever else you may have.
All sorts of tricks of the trade.
There's so many tricks out there, and it's about playing and not about starting. I think the mic is a lot about making you feel good about yourself. So now I'm a real podcaster. I have a real pretty mic here, and it's
look at this mic. Look at this thing. This is nice, right?
Very nice. I think it's a confidence booster.
100%. Should we do question number 3 now?
Yeah, let's do question number 3. What can I possibly add to the world of podcasts? Does anyone want to hear what I have to say? So
we addressed this a little bit earlier, but at the same time, I want to point out that despite what I said in the earlier answer, that how are you going to distinguish yourself? On the other hand, there are 7 billion people on Earth. And yes, if you narrow your focus to those people who want to hear what you have to say, there are definitely people out there who want to hear your ideas. I've discovered this myself. Every podcaster has discovered this and been excited and encouraged by people, wow, getting into your own ideas. There certainly are people, but it has to be the people who are your fans, the people that really you're speaking to. I'm producing a podcast for somebody, and their first episode, this is a typical example, their first episode, they got, I think, 160 people, something like that, listening to that first episode and that first day. And then it went down to like 30. And rather than being discouraged, I told them, don't be discouraged. That's how it goes. People show up the first day to listen. Who knows what this is? And you're right. About 80-something% of them, it wasn't for them. But then they had 30 the next week. Those people came back a second time. You don't come back a second week if you didn't like it the first week. And the week after that, it was 60 people. The week after that, it was slightly more. And it's been going up little by little every single week. If you have the people who want to hear what you have to say, then you'll be able to speak to them. Of course, you have something to say. I'll give you an example from my recruiting days as a yeshiva head. I once walked into a school, I think our first year, and there were 17 people in the room. And for recruiting, that was really good. And I got really excited. And only one of them signed up to get more information. And as time went on, as the years went on, I realized that's how it works. Those 17 people showed up probably because they want to get out of class, or a teacher said show up, or who knows, I'll hear every yeshiva, I don't know. But I wasn't talking to those 17 people. I was talking to the one guy, I don't know who it was yet, but the one guy who actually was interested. That's the case here also. There are 7 billion people in the world. There are probably not that many podcasts that interest all 7 billion. However, there are plenty that can interest a small subset of that, and that subset can then grow larger and larger. Once you start off finding who your fans are, and those are people who really want to hear what you have to say, believe me, you have them. Once you have them in your podcast, these are your people who really like you. They're really into you. You know, you have to be patient. It takes some time. It's not the kind of thing that happens right away. But if you think about what it means to speak in front of a room of 100 people, 200 people, 500 people, someone who's worried about what people are going to say certainly would apply to me, might be nervous talking to a room of 500 people. But on a podcast, you do that. And because you edit it, because you only release something you're happy with releasing, you can actually go and talk to a room of 500 people. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Imagine a room of 500 people, 1,000 people in your audience. I mean, that's an incredible audience. With a podcast with 1,000 people listening, that's not crazy. It happens all the time. 1,000 people listen to an episode, and guess what? They're even more attentive than 1,000 people in an audience, because if you have 1,000 people in an audience, who knows how many are actually listening? If 1,000 people listen to your podcast, if they're not interested, they'll turn it off. That means they actually listen to your podcast. You're really getting a message across. So yes, you definitely have a message that's worth saying. You definitely can reach those people as long as you're patient and you allow yourself to find the people who want to hear your message. That's my answer to that question.
I love it. I'd like to add some more things to it. First of all, it's
Please.
low barrier to entry. You do not need to pitch a radio show, a radio company to host you and have all that pressure. You get to just start it and see what happens with it. Number two, you are not starting a podcast to talk to your mom and dad and put all that pressure on your family WhatsApps for them to go all listen. Because if you wanted to talk to them, you would just talk to them on your WhatsApp chats.
Yes.
When you're starting your podcast, you're casting this wide net to see who's actually interested in that super specific. Hopefully, as you mentioned earlier, you want to niche down and talk about something narrow. We're all these beautiful people out there who are interested in just that. And they might not be your grandmother and your uncle. So expecting them to be your downloads is not a great way to start with your podcast, understanding that you are going on a scavenger hunt. You're going to go find these people who are interested in exactly what you've been interested in. And the world of the internet really made this happen. Another thing is
I love that idea of a scavenger hunt, by the way. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, it's who are you going to find out there?
Yeah, they're there. You just got to find them.
You just got to find them. And I remember when I started podcasting, I don't know if you had that as well. I remember having to explain to people what a podcast is and how they can access it. I find that to be a lot less of a problem these days. How about you?
Oh, for sure. People would tell me, I love watching your podcast. And I'd be like, I don't think you do, because it's all audio. It doesn't work like that. It's not on television. But nowadays, I think people finally are coming around to understanding better what it actually is. They really know what a podcast is. And if they don't, they're probably not going to listen anyway, because they're just not in that space. But more and more people are.
Yeah. And another thing, when you're starting and you look at your numbers, like you post your podcast and you're like, how many people listened? And you check it 30 minutes later, and then you check a day later.
Oh, you do
That
that?
might,
I do that all the time. I know it's
I
not
do
healthy, but I do
that
it all the
as
time.
well. I do that as well. But when you start, the expectation maybe should be how, every person is a celebration. And when you have shorter or smaller downloads 1 week or 1 month, you could ask yourself, what has been going around in the world? Maybe it was Chagim season and no one had internet access half of the month and the downloads went down. Or maybe the topic I was talking about was not interesting enough. Or maybe you have to work harder at finding guests that are more aligned with your audience and really listening and feeling your audience energy, because they're not talking to you like they are on social media. You are guessing what they're feeling, and you are moving with the waves of the numbers that you're getting. And eventually you get a hang of it. Somebody pitched a topic to me. I said, I'm sorry, my audience really doesn't want to listen to that. And how do I know? The numbers. I know people are not interested.
Do you have the same things I do? Do you find sometimes that, and this isn't very healthy, I admit it, but when I'm checking the numbers, refreshing every half hour to see what's going on, okay, every half minute to see what the numbers are. And then let's say one episode doesn't do as well as the previous episode. It's like, oh, what happened? Is this, but I realize that's ridiculous. You can't go episode by episode. Obviously there are general trends, one episode will be higher, one episode will be lower, and they'll go back up again. But sometimes you get yourself into these
like the stock market.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a stock market.
It always goes up though. It always goes up.
Ultimately, it always does go up. And once it goes down, maybe, but on the whole, thank God it's been going up, which is a good thing.
Yeah. So I think we covered everything in that question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Should we go on to that final question, back to question 7 about, is it easy to make money in podcasting?
Yeah. So I think you've tried really hard to say that it's really not easy to make money in podcasting. And I'll just reframe this. If you're going into this and you're brand new, you've never had a business before, you've never sold anything to anyone before, and you are going in with the mindset of, I'm going to attract sponsors who are going to be reaching out to me and pouring money. When people say they're making money on TikTok, they're making $15 or $30 or whatever else. It adds up. So we're not talking about millions of dollars the moment you say, I launched to Facebook or Meta. And but is it easy to make money in podcasting? The answer very well may be yes. And for myself, I've learned many things in the last few years, and people I'm working with and so many people I've met, just the smiles on their face. It's like they get to do what they love doing, and the money is coming in and the clients are coming in and they're doing the work they love and that they're meant to do. And they're respected for the views they have and the opinions they have and the experience and knowledge they have. This is not a 9-to-5, please do this, please do this. This becomes a lifestyle, and you could really create a business where the money flows and where you can actually do what you love doing and earn money. So yes,
absolutely. So let me reframe what I said earlier. Also, I meant, if you think you're going to start off and right away advertisers specifically are going to be throwing money at you, that's not true. But in terms of a long-term plan, it doesn't have to be that long, but I mean, not the first few weeks, but after a while, there are ways of making money, and there's so many different ways. It's not necessarily directly from the podcast all the time, though it can be that also. It can also come from all the ways you're branding yourself, from the various things that you're doing in addition to your podcast helps promote. And all those various ways that you do so can do it in addition to the fact that the podcast itself can bring in money too. I don't want to overstate it and say you're not going to make money from podcasting. That's not true. If you think it's going to come easily right away without any effort, that's not going to happen. But if you're willing to put in the effort, if you're willing to make a proper podcast, if you're willing to be passionate about it, once again, we get that same idea. If you're willing to really put your heart and soul into it, then you can make money in podcasting.
Yeah. And let's say you do want to just focus on brands and sponsorships. The classic way, the mainstream sponsorship programs are working. You have to have $1,000 downloads per and you end up getting $15 to $25 per that 1,000.
And so that's in 6 weeks, I think, right? 1,000 downloads every 6 weeks. That's how they measure
it. In 6 weeks. And right. For many, I would say 70 or 50, I think it's in the 70% of podcasts are not holding by those kinds of numbers. Most podcasters are producing something. Let's say they get $1,000, or 1,000 downloads per episode in 6 weeks, which is amazing. But $15 or $20 is nothing compared to the work.
It's not going to support your family, right?
It's not going to support your family. Might be a little offensive, maybe. But if you want to drive income through sponsorships, you can create your own brand strategy. You can do aggressive outreach, create your own brand relationships, and leverage your specific audience to a brand that specifically wants to be talking to your audience. And even with sponsorship that feels super impossible or difficult, even if you take that and do aggressive strategic planning around that, and you can even do it before you launch, so you launch already with money in your pocket, that is totally a possibility. That's not completely out of your reach. Yeah,
I think that's actually where narrowing can come in as another benefit. When we talk about narrowing your audience, making it more niche, when we talk about $25 for every 1,000 downloads, that's probably referring to 1,000 random downloads. That's just 1,000 people out there. But if you have a very pure audience, an audience that's all, choose your group, people who like X, Y, or Z, and an advertiser wants to reach, or a sponsor wants to reach that particular group, then you have something which is actually valuable now, because even though you might not have a huge audience in the tens of thousands, that's 1,000 people who want exactly this particular thing. Let's say you have a podcast that's about fishing. Okay, it's about fishing. And you have 1,000 people who are into fishing. And then you have a guy who sells fishing gear. Well, maybe you only have 1,000 people, although 1,000 is great. I don't want to knock it down, but 1,000 people, that guy wants to talk to exactly those 1,000 people. So your content is worth more than just $25, I'm sure. I don't want to knock it down, but 1,000 is great. I don't want to
Sorry, I just wanted to go and see if we have live questions before we wrap this up.
Okay.
Are you able to look at that? I rudely interrupted. But this is not a podcast.
This is not a podcast, right? I don't know if anyone has any live questions. They're more than welcome to put it in the comments down. Franciska, is it on your page? It's on my page and on my JCH podcast production page. I don't see any questions right now, but that's okay.
Okay.
I don't want to knock it down, but 1,000 people.
We are on a little, so we have, I don't see questions because I just joined. I don't see the older questions. But I would like to wrap this up if we don't have questions that we know about yet, because I do think we were pretty thorough here, but I am sure we missed something because we have such wise people who are watching who will have questions to even our very thorough.
There is no question. You're right.
Okay. But I would like to have you and then myself share different ways we support podcasters to making this journey a little more fun and supportive and enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Less overwhelming.
Okay, I'll go first here. I can say that what I do is I help people podcast. I have a company, jewishcoffeehouse.com, but it's also, you can also go to jchpodcast.com, JCH Jewish Coffee House, JCH podcasts with an S.com. And you can see, you can have their way to reach me. You can sign up for a free consultation. And why would you want to talk to me? Because if you're interested in podcasting, whether it's to do all the work for you and all you have to do is sit and record and I'll take care of everything else, or if you want to learn how to do it and you'll do the work yourself, you want to be able to become an independent podcaster and you have the time and the desire to actually do that yourself, whatever it is, I can help you out. I've helped out a lot of different clients. I've helped out many people over the years in terms of podcasting. I mean, over the years, podcasting isn't that old in the industry, but I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years and I'm really proud of the experience that I've gained, both from doing my own podcast and from working with other people. And I think my clients are very satisfied. And I hope that you would reach out to me and discover what I can do to help you out. So go to jchpodcast.com and book a free consultation and we can talk.
I just want to add to what you're saying, because there's something that you do that's super unique that I don't know anyone else who does that the way you do or at all. Scott has this service where he is your live podcast producer. Mm-hmm. So he comes onto the episode when you're recording with your guest, and it could be super overwhelming, or there's so much information that needs to be processed. You have somebody feeding you questions or responses, or, helping you moderate if you have a few guests or a panel, and then giving you that feedback and that strategic element. So it's not just the editing and the stuff behind the scenes, but really being your, holding you by your hand and coaching you, if I may say, use that
Mhm.
word, so you can, uh, be that performer when you're podcasting, come off strong and knowledgeable and not be thrown off track. There's so much that goes on when you're on an interview, and with so many years of experience dealing with all kinds of situations, you can be caught off guard. You can have your guest caught off guard, and just having that extra support live is so cool. I think you called it the podcast whisperer, but it's such a unique offer that I think it's worth mentioning.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I actually do appreciate doing that. I really enjoy doing that. It's probably the part of the job I enjoy the most, but I call it being the producer, being the person who's helping you out or saying, why don't you do that again? And now this time do it like this, helping people being able to do it. So thank you for mentioning that. That's something which I like doing. How about talk about what you do, Franciska?
Yes. So what I do, so I help with the launch process. Right now, it's a 1-day process, and there's a little bit that happens beforehand and after, but we get you all set up in just 1 day. And I teach you how to do it on your own. Or if you do not want to do it on your own, we could train in your team or transition you to a team like Scott's team or other podcast producing teams. So this is a very 1 day easy, get this done. I hold your hand and we get all the things done, from your art. We choose your music. We figure out what your story is. We create that awesome trailer for people to come in and understand what your podcast is about. And then we roll it out to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and we do all of that.
Okay. If you don't mind my also putting in a plug, because I have to say, I've used Franciska's services myself because she's so good, and she does something which is just fantastic in terms of teaching people really how to monetize and how to make sure their podcast can actually become a true business model. And she is an expert, and she's helped me tremendously with that. So I have tremendous gratitude to you personally, Franciska, for helping me. And I think you definitely deserve a full plug to say she is amazing at that. It's really worthwhile. So if you want to have a podcast, I'm sitting here talking about, it's so hard to make money. Well, guess what? Franciska disagreed with me a little bit because she knows a lot more about that than I do. And she's really, really good at that. So I highly recommend, from personal experience, that you contact Franciska, because she really is amazing at doing what she does. And if you want to make this into a business model in addition to a passion project, Franciska is a person to go to. Absolutely, really, the person.
Thank you so much for these words. And yes, once you're launched, then we could talk about monetization. I like to have the priorities straight. And as you mentioned before, starting this to make money is the wrong reason to start a podcast. But once you have your podcast and your passion is there and you have all the pieces in place, yes, if you want to talk about monetization, you are welcome to reach out to me.
Franciska, how do people reach you if they want to go and find you?
FranciskaKosman.com, or you can DM me right here on Facebook. How about you?
Okay, same thing. You can DM me here on Facebook, or go to jewishcoffeehouse.com or jchpodcast.com.
And let's mention our podcasts once again.
Okay, why don't you go first?
I am a host of the Franciska Show podcast. We started out interviewing Jewish women in the arts and entertainment, and then we transitioned to Jewish taboo topics.
And okay, I am the host of Orthodox Conundrum, and also the host of Intimate Judaism. Orthodox Conundrum releases every week. It's about issues in the Orthodox Jewish community, good, bad, some which we're proud of, some which need some work, to try and talk about how we can make a better Orthodox community. And along with that, I also do the Intimate Judaism podcast with my friend and co-host Tali Rosenbaum. We released another episode today. It comes out approximately once a month. And yeah, I hope you enjoy them, because they're a lot of fun to do. Okay, Franciska, this was terrific. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you. This was so fun, and I hope you all enjoyed this as much as we did.
Okay, ready to go offline?
We are ready.
Okay, take care, everybody. Thanks.